Dads, how did your son try to convince you he was a genius? My son tried to convince me he was a genius by nearly blowing up our kitchen. No exaggeration, I walked in expecting to smell dinner and instead smelled melted plastic and panic. But honestly, that disaster taught me more about him and about myself than any report card ever could. My son, Theo, is 9. He's got that kind of unfiltered curiosity that's equal parts adorable and terrifying. The kind of kid who asks why the sky is blue then interrupts your explanation to ask why chickens don't wear shoes. Lately, he's been obsessed with the idea of being a genius. I blame the gifted and talented program at his school. Half the kids got in, half didn't, and the ones who didn't suddenly started feeling like background characters in their own lives. Theo was one of the kids who didn't get in, and even though he pretended it didn't bother him, I could see it, the way his shoulders dropped, the way he tried to smile but couldn't quite lift the edges. I thought he'd move on, but last Friday, he came home with this determined look on his face, like a tiny scientist plotting world domination. "Dad," he said, "I'm gonna prove to my teacher I'm a genius." I told him he already was, but he shook his head. "No, I need proof." Did I ask what proof meant? Nope, and I regret that deeply. Around 6 p.m., I heard clanking in the kitchen. I assumed he was fixing a snack until I heard him whisper, "Okay, 3, 2, 1. If parenting has taught me anything, it's that countdowns are never good news." I sprinted into the kitchen just in time to see a plastic bottle on the counter, baking soda everywhere, vinegar forming a puddle, Theo wearing my safety goggles, and a cloud of fizzing chaos erupting like a tiny volcano. Then he looked at me with this proud grin and yelled, "I made invention." Pretty sure he meant an invention, but grammar was not the priority at that moment. The bottle shot upward, ricocheted off the cabinet and landed in the sink, thank God, before melting into a sad, lopsided blob. The kitchen smelled like a science fair had died in there. I stood there, stunned, while Theo pulled off the goggles and said the line that broke me. "Dad, if I make something cool enough, they'll know I'm smart, right?" And he said it with this tiny voice, scared, hopeful, like the whole world was balanced on my answer. I knelt down, wiped a splash of vinegar off his face and said, "Theo, being smart isn't about blowing things up. It's about asking questions, trying things, messing up, trying again. That's what geniuses do." He frowned. "But they said I'm not gifted." I took a deep breath. Gifted doesn't mean better. It just means someone learns differently. But genius? That's something you build, not something a test tells you. He stared at me for a long second, then whispered, "So, I'm still allowed to try?" "Kiddo," I said, "I hope you never stop trying." He hugged me so tight I nearly lost balance. That night, after he went to bed, I cleaned the kitchen and found a notebook on the counter titled Theo's Genius Plans. Inside were dozens of sketches, inventions, experiments, ideas, some impossible, some adorable, some actually brilliant in that strange kid logic way. And I realized something that hit me harder than I expected. He wasn't trying to be a genius. He was trying to be seen, to matter, to be enough. And isn't that all of us? The next morning, I emailed his teacher, not to complain, not to demand anything. I asked if Theo could present his invention journal to the class someday. She agreed immediately. Theo didn't get into the gifted program, but when he stood in front of the class a week later, explaining his inventions with passion that lit up the room, he didn't need a label. He didn't need proof. He needed a chance, and he shined. So yeah, my son tried to prove he was a genius by creating a kitchen volcano. He failed spectacularly, but in the most important way, he succeeded. Because geniuses aren't always born. Sometimes they're 9-year-olds in oversized goggles, trying their hardest to change the world one explosion at a time.